Today is April 22nd, 2026. This is the day the Hormuz files has been counting down to for 2 weeks. The day the ceasefire was supposed to expire. The day the bombs were supposed to either stop permanently or start again. And here is what actually happened. This morning, hours before the deadline, Trump posted on Truth Social that he is extending the ceasefire. No new end date, no specific conditions, just extended. Until Iran's government, which Trump himself called seriously fractured, can come up with a unified proposal. And Iran's response to that extension? An advisor to Iran's chief negotiator posted that the extension, and I am reading this exactly, has no meaning. He said, "The continuation of the blockade is no different from bombing and must be responded to militarily." And he added the sentence that should make everyone watching this channel stop cold. The extension of the ceasefire by Trump certainly means buying time in order to deliver a surprise strike. It is the time for Iran's initiative. It is the time for Iran's initiative. Today, on what was supposed to be deadline day, both sides are simultaneously extending the ceasefire and threatening to destroy each other. And nobody, not Washington, not Tehran, not Islamabad, not the oil markets, not the 20,000 sailors still stranded in the Gulf, nobody knows what happens next. This is the Hormuz files, and this is the most complicated day of this entire war. Let me give you the official Washington picture, and then I will tell you what it actually means. Trump on Tuesday morning on CNBC's Squawk Box said he did not plan to extend the ceasefire beyond Wednesday. He said the US was raring to go. He said if there's no deal, he would certainly expect bombing to resume. And then, hours later, he extended the ceasefire, with no end date, because Pakistan asked him to. Let that land for a second. The President of the United States told a national television audience he was not extending the ceasefire, and then extended it hours later because Pakistan's Prime Minister and Army Chief called and asked him to. The reason Trump gave for the extension is extraordinary. He said Iran's government is, quote, seriously fractured, not unexpectedly so. And CNN is reporting that US officials believe the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who has been in hiding since his father was killed in the opening strikes, is not giving his subordinates clear directions. That his negotiators are having to guess what he wants without specific instruction. Think about what that means operationally. America is trying to negotiate a nuclear deal with a government whose leader is in hiding and whose negotiators don't know what they are authorized to agree to. Meanwhile, the Pentagon confirmed Tuesday it had intercepted a second sanctioned tanker, this one outside the Strait entirely in the Indo-Pacific. The blockade is expanding, the ceasefire is extended, and Vance, who was supposed to fly to Pakistan on Tuesday, is not going. Nobody on the American side seems to know exactly what the next move is either. Now let's hear from Iran, because what Tehran is saying right now is frankly more alarming than anything Washington is saying. Iran's parliamentary speaker Ghalibaf, the man who sat across the table from J.D. Vance in Islamabad, posted on X this week. His words, exact quote, "We do not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats, and in the past 2 weeks, we have prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield." New cards on the battlefield, that phrase. In the last 2 weeks, during the ceasefire, Iran has been digging its missile launchers out of sealed underground tunnels. We showed you the satellite images in Episode 5. Absorb, dig out, launch again. That is the doctrine. And Ghalibaf is now openly telling the world that those 2 weeks were not spent preparing for peace. They were spent preparing for war. An advisor to Ghalibaf was even more direct about the ceasefire extension. He called it a ploy to buy time for a surprise strike. He said it means nothing. He said the blockade must be responded to militarily. And he said it is the time for Iran's initiative. Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi called the naval blockade and the ship seizures a clear violation of the ceasefire. Iran's military command said the management and control of the Strait of Hormuz will not be exploited by the, quote, lying and delusional US president. And the death toll inside Iran, released by Iran's forensics chief, now stands at nearly 3,400 people killed since February 28th. Nearly 3,400 Iranians in 53 days. That is the human cost sitting behind every diplomatic statement coming out of Tehran right now. And it matters. Because a government negotiating while 3,400 of its citizens lie dead is not negotiating from a position of weakness. It is negotiating from a position of profound and justified rage. Now, here is the detail that I think is the most important and most underreported aspect of this entire situation. Trump said Iran's government is seriously fractured. And CNN is reporting that US officials believe the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is operating in such secrecy that his own negotiators don't know what they are authorized to accept. And here is why that is terrifying rather than reassuring. A fractured government with a hidden leader and confused negotiators is not a government that is about to sign a peace deal. It is a government that is about to do something unpredictable. History is full of examples of this pattern. When a government loses clarity of command, when the chain of authority is broken or confused, the danger of miscalculation skyrockets. Because nobody knows who has authority to say stop. Nobody knows whose finger is on which button. Nobody knows if the order to retaliate for the Tuska seizure has been given, or if it is waiting for a leader who is not taking calls from hiding. And Ghalibaf, Iran's parliamentary speaker and chief negotiator, is not a moderate. He is a former IRGC commander, a man whose entire political identity is built on Iranian resistance. When he says new cards on the battlefield, he is not speaking metaphorically. He is a military man using military language to describe military preparations. Professor Mearsheimer would look at this situation and see exactly what his offensive realism framework predicts. A government under existential pressure, bombed for 53 days, its cities damaged, its citizens dead, its oil blockaded, its ships seized, does not become more compliant under that pressure. It becomes more dangerous. Because states under existential threat do not calculate cost-benefit ratios. They fight. Let me bring our full panel to deadline day, because every single one of them has said something this week that directly addresses what we are watching right now. Professor Mearsheimer called this war irrational from day one, built on a theory of victory that was never achievable through air power alone. And what do we see on deadline day? America has not achieved regime change. Iran's government stands, fractured, hidden, confused, but standing. The nuclear program is unresolved. The Strait is under Iranian control. And the administration that said this would be over in weeks is now extending a ceasefire with no end date because it cannot figure out who to negotiate with. That is what an irrational war looks like when it hits a wall. Scott Ritter told us on day 3 that the regime change operation had failed. 53 days later. He was right in a way that is now visible to the entire world. Iran's government is not collapsed. It is fractured. There is a difference. Fractured governments do not surrender. They splinter. And splintered governments produce unpredictable military action. Colonel McGregor warned about economic catastrophe. The death toll is now nearly 3,400 in Iran alone. More than 2,200 in Lebanon. 32 American service members killed. Oil above $100. The naval blockade expanding beyond the Strait into the Indo-Pacific. George Galloway asked from the beginning why Iran would agree to anything under threat. Tehran's answer this week is definitional. We will not negotiate under the shadow of threats. And we have new cards on the battlefield. And Professor Morandi, speaking from inside Iran throughout this war, has been consistent. Iran does not improvise. It executes doctrine. And right now, its doctrine appears to be extend the ceasefire, rearm, reveal nothing about the new cards, and wait for America to make the next mistake. Here is where I stand on deadline day, and I want to be as honest with you as I have ever been on this channel. I do not know how this ends, and I am suspicious of anyone who tells you they do. What I can tell you is what the evidence shows. Trump extended the ceasefire because he does not have a clear path to resuming the war. The political cost, with approval ratings at 40%, with oil above $100, with American families paying $4 a gallon at the pump, is too high to just start bombing again without something to show for it. Iran extended its cooperation with the ceasefire, however grudgingly, because its government is genuinely fractured and its new supreme leader has not given clear orders. But Iran has also spent the last 2 weeks rearming, digging out missile launchers, preparing what Ghalibaf calls new cards on the battlefield. So what you have is two sides that both need more time. One because it does not know how to resume the war, the other because it is not yet ready to fight it again at full capacity. And a ceasefire extended with no end date, with a blockade still running, with ships still being seized, with Iran still controlling the Strait, with a hidden supreme leader whose negotiators are guessing what he wants, is not peace. It is a very dangerous pause. The Hormuz files will be here for every development, every card Iran reveals on the battlefield, every Truth Social post Trump fires off in the middle of the night, every satellite image, every expert verdict, every twist in a story that, despite what anyone tells you, is nowhere near its ending. Subscribe. Share this with someone who thinks the ceasefire extension means the war is over. And drop a comment below. What do you think Iran's new cards on the battlefield actually are? That is the question that keeps me up tonight. I'll see you in the next file.